Howdy. Welcome to Grandma's Tiny Garden. Today I would like to talk to you about growing in containers. Did you know over 20% of Americans live in apartments? But living in an apartment does not mean you can't grow vegetables or fruit or flowers, whatever, herbs. Doesn't matter where you live, there's always a way to grow a few plants. Now, I'm not saying you can be self-sustainable. I guess you could if you had the right grow light system and enough room, but I'm talking about just the hobby gardeners. I prefer to grow in containers. Even planter boxes is really containers. It's contained garden. Living here in North Texas, we have really hard soil. It's black clay, and it's very hard to work. And as you get older, at this point in my life, it would be impossible for me to really grow unless I did like a lasagna garden or something. It would really be almost impossible for me to grow in ground. So I grow in containers and planter boxes. I prefer containers over even planter boxes. It's easier for me. It's so much less work. It really is. And really, just about anything you can grow in the ground, you can grow in a container if you have a container big enough. Or if you don't mind the plant being smaller than it normally would be if grown in the ground. So anyway, I want to talk to you a little bit about the pros and cons of container gardening. Some of the pros is you do have better control over the watering of the plant. You're less likely to overwater. Of course, it's very easy to overwater even in a container, but using the proper container and the proper soil, you're much less likely to overwater. Also, you have much better control of the weather. You can start plants earlier. Just protect them on cold nights. You can extend your growing season, same way, protecting them when it starts getting cold or frosty and so on. So you can really extend the growing season and have better control. For example, peppers. I prefer here in North Texas to grow peppers in containers simply because they easily get sunburnt on the peppers, and and I do grow some out in my planter boxes, but I have to use shade cloth on those. The ones I grow in containers, I simply move them into the patio and give them a little shade when they have the peppers on them, so they don't get so sunburnt. Container gardening is also an excellent way to control your invasive species. Mint is a perfect example. I have learned through the years not to grow mint, even in my planter boxes. I have one catnip growing back in a 4x4 bed, and this is going to be the last year. I'm going to cut it out and plant a couple of pots of it, because if you're going to grow a mint in any type of planter bed or in the ground, it's the only thing you can grow. It's going to take over everything else in that planter box. I don't care what size that planter box is. Another pro of growing in containers is you have much better control over insects and disease. It's so much easier working with a container, because the soil, doesn't necessarily have to be sterile, but you're going to have cleaner soil in a container. And I would not recommend using soil directly out of your ground, but buying a good planter soil. So you have much better control over your disease. And the insects is just easier. Small contained plant, it's easier to find them, easier to spray if you're going to use a spray. Whatever you decide to use, it's going to be easier. Also, of course, it takes less room. And yes, you can grow vertically in a container. You have to be a little imaginative on, using a trellis system. I've used tomato cages in the past. I've used chicken wire in the past. I've also used bamboo poles. You're limitless, just your imagination, whatever you can figure out. There's many ways to grow vertically. Another option is you can buy vertical containers. They do tend to be a little on the expensive side, but if you have the money, it's well worth it. And almost any plant that grows in the ground, almost just about can grow in a container. Now, I wouldn't try to grow it oak tree or something like that, but you can definitely grow citrus trees or fig trees or coffee plants in them. It just depends on the size of the container. And a lot of plants, they will flourish in a container and they'll only grow so big, whatever the container allows. And as long as you keep the nutrients there for the plant, it will still live and thrive. It may not grow as big as it could out in nature, but that doesn't mean you're not going to get fruit and flowers from it. So almost any plant can be grown in a container. Some of the ones I've grown in the past is cucumbers, cantaloupes, potatoes, very large tomatoes. I'm talking beefsteak tomatoes. I've had tomatoes grow 7 to 9 feet in containers. I mean, they grew so big, I had to start topping them off because I had nowhere for them to go to keep going up. But blueberry plants, I've grown blueberry plants in containers. You can grow citrus trees, fig trees, coffee plants. It's limitless what you can grow in a container. Now, you will need to use supplement nutrition in plants, but there's so many good organic fertilizers out in the market now that's not very difficult to come by. I do suggest that you use a water soluble one. It's just easier in a plant, and you can easily burn a plant by over fertilizing it in a container. So your best bet is to go with one that you dissolve in water first. Now, for watering, I don't use city water too much on my plants that's in containers. I mean, you can. I would suggest that if, most places have chlorinated water, that you let the water set out for at least 24 hours for the chlorine to evaporate. But I try to use rainwater whenever possible. When not, then what I do is I have like 4 or 5 of my watering cans, and I fill them up the day before to let the chlorine evaporate before I use it on the plants. But it's not too hard to do. So I would encourage everyone to consider container gardening. It's fun, it's easy, and for us old people, it is great. Like, it's so much easier to come out here, and I can't bend a lot because of arthritis, and sometimes weeding these planter boxes even become a challenge. And that's another thing. Containers, you don't have to worry about weeds. So I'll just pull up a chair out here, in front of the plant if I need to work on it, either picking off caterpillars or, pruning it or whatever. And I can do it directly from my chair. So, and as far as containers go, you're only limited by your imagination. It doesn't have to be a plant container that you use. The main thing is to make sure you have well drain. It drains well. Even all of these that I bought, a lot of these pots I bought on sale at Walmart, and we even took these, even though they had holes in them, and drilled additional holes so we had well drainage. Also, you want to make sure you use a light potting soil. It doesn't necessarily have to be a sterile potting soil, but you may, buy one, and if you think it's not light enough, add some perlite to it. It's very easy and very cheap to do. Another option with containers that I really like, and I don't have any growing this year in my grow bags, but grow bags are very good. They're cheap. You can get them on Amazon, various websites. The only drawback I have found with these so far is I haven't been able to find any that's made in the USA. So if you know of any grow bags that's made in the USA, please add your comments with a link below, because I would really like, it's an American company, but they're manufactured in, I believe, China. So I'd like them to either be manufactured in the United States or at least North America or South America. So anyway, growing in containers as you get older is really the way to go, and I highly recommend it for anyone. So thank you for finding my channel, and if you like this video, please subscribe, and I will talk to you later.